Let's take a look at shares of Taiwan Semiconductor. They are moving to the upside here, up just over 4%. The company beating the street's expectations in its most recent quarterly report. That part of that driven by demand for its 3-nanometer technology. But despite this beat here, it's important to put it in context from what we saw a year ago, because profit is down big from a year ago, falling just about 25% amid some of the challenge that we're seeing more broadly speaking throughout the industry. We want to bring in Moor Insight strategy founder and CEO Patrick Moorhead for a little bit more on this, and also some of the broader discussions that are happening right now within the chip space. But Patrick, let's start with what we just heard from Taiwan Semiconductor, because in this release, the CEO there pointing to the fact that AI-related demand continues to be strong, but not necessarily enough to offset the overall cyclicality of their business. What does that then tell us just about the state of the chip industry and some of the challenges that these companies, that the industry still faces today?
Yeah, so TSMC comments came right in line with what we're seeing out there in the PC market, data center, AI, smartphones, and even PCs. And it's really a balance, right? You have this mega growth in data center AI. You have some continuing burn off in inventory, particularly in the smartphone market. So it's really puts and takes. I think that we're out of the PC and also getting close to the data center growth stage here. I think the smartphone market in Western Europe still looks pretty good for growth. I'm a bit concerned, though, about the China smartphone market. It is a very large one, which is directly related to the state of the China economy.
Is the TSM, the Taiwan Semiconductor that we're looking at here today, one that investors are already pricing in a movement away, or a kind of look across this business and realizing that there's not going to be as much reliance on their fabrication process as more capacity gets brought on elsewhere around the world?
Yeah, I don't think investors are factoring in competition from Intel's IFS or even Samsung's increased capabilities in its logic capabilities, where they would fab things like processors. So I don't think that's built in yet. But I do, though, see as Intel gets closer to building out its Columbus foundry with IFS, and quite frankly, TSMC has an issue inside of the U.S. in getting its Arizona foundry going. You could see the bears come out and value the company a lot lower, because right now it's the only game in town for bleeding edge. But Intel is coming on strong, and so is Samsung.
Patrick, some of the pressure that we've seen throughout the chip industry this week, largely coming because of the crackdown that we heard from the Biden administration in terms of the restrictions that they're putting in place for chips sent to China. Well, how should we be viewing this? I guess, how big of a revenue impact do you see this potentially being for some of those names most directly affected when you take into account the exposure that Nvidia, Intel, AMD, just to name a few, have in that space, and what that means for their business going forward?
Yeah, so there have been export controls for decades on the amount of flops, as an example, that supercomputers could use, chips from Intel. This latest shot across the bow here is very specifically focused on Nvidia, and because they are the 800-pound gorilla in the AI training market, in particular for this latest generation of generative AI. I don't see as much of an impact on AMD, if nothing else, because they're not participating very heavily in this market right now. If it does become protracted, I do think it could slightly impact AMD's growth potential. But again, this is a net upside for AMD anyways. And I think the same for Intel, who, while they have some data center AI capability out there, it's not nearly the performance right now that the administration is worried about. And you didn't ask me this question, but I'm gonna put this out there anyways. I think when you're talking about cutting off exports of a card that's about the size of a package of cigarettes, it's really hard to keep that out of a certain country. It's very easy to bring in on a boat, on an airplane. So I'm very skeptical that the current embargo of the Nvidia products in China, the latest one, is going to have any impact on the speed at which China is going to be able to create large language models and other foundational models out there.